The massive spacecraft drifted silently through the cold darkness of space, its hull scarred by countless battles. Captain June Park stood motionless, his fingers tracing the frozen surface of the cryo chambers. Each chamber contained a human, frozen in time, a last desperate hope for a civilization on the brink of extinction. Administrator Yuna Kim worked nearby, her fingers flying across holographic displays. The diagnostics were grim. The Galactic Confederation had been fighting a losing battle against the Void Swarm for years. Entire star systems had been consumed, billions of lives erased in moments. Now only this ship remained, a final, desperate gamble. "The Council has agreed," Yuna said softly, her voice barely audible above the gentle hum of machinery. "We're activating the human contingency." Siak, the robotic activation specialist, moved with precise mechanical movements. His metallic fingers connected a series of complex circuits, initiating a revival sequence that had been dormant for decades. The cryo vault was massive, stretching almost the entire length of the ship. 10,000 humans lay sleeping, preserved like fragile artifacts of a civilization long forgotten. The first signs of activation began slowly. Soft blue lights pulsed within each chamber, creating a mesmerizing rhythm of hope and uncertainty. Frost began to melt, revealing glimpses of human faces, men and women from different backgrounds, different ages, all chosen for a specific purpose. Around the cryo vault, representatives from various alien species watched with a mixture of hope and fear. The humans were an unknown quantity. They had been preserved during Earth's final moments, a backup plan created when humanity realized the scale of the threat they might face. Siak's programming worked meticulously. Each cryopod was carefully monitored, life support systems gradually bringing the sleeping humans back to consciousness. The process was delicate, too fast, and the humans might not survive. Too slow, and the Void Swarm might destroy everything before they could be awakened. Captain Park watched the revival with a sense of profound responsibility. He had been part of the original team that prepared this contingency plan. Humanity's last hope now rested in these carefully selected individuals. The first human to show signs of consciousness was a woman in her mid-40s. Her eyes flickered, muscles twitching as decades of suspended animation began to fade. Around her, more chambers started to show similar signs of life. The soft blue lights grew stronger, the hum of machinery becoming more intense. Yuna checked the systems again. The revival was proceeding at 12% efficiency, slower than hoped, but still within acceptable parameters. Each awakening brought both promise and risk. These humans were coming back to a world completely different from the one they had left behind. The alien representatives watched nervously. Some believed the humans were their salvation. Others saw them as a potential new threat. The Void Swarm had already destroyed civilizations far more advanced and organized than humanity had ever been. Siak continued his precise work, monitoring each chamber with incredible detail. His robotic mind processed thousands of variables, simultaneously, ensuring the delicate revival process remained stable. Outside the ship, space remained dark and dangerous. Distant sensors showed the approaching Void Swarm, a massive, incomprehensible threat that consumed everything in its path. Time was running out. More humans began to stir. Their breathing became more regular, muscles showing signs of reactivation. Years of careful genetic preparation and technological preservation were now being tested. Captain Park felt a sense of tension he had never experienced before. These humans represented humanity's final chance. Their skills, their unpredictability, their raw potential, everything now depended on this moment of awakening. The first complete revival would happen soon. One human would open their eyes and understand the desperate situation facing them. One human would be the first to realize that they were humanity's last hope against a threat that had already destroyed countless civilizations. The blue lights continued to pulse. The machinery hummed. Space remained cold and unforgiving. And slowly, carefully, humanity began to awaken. David Kim's eyes snapped open with a clarity that defied decades of suspended sleep. Unlike the other humans slowly waking around him, he was instantly alert. His military training kicked in immediately, scanning the strange environment with a predator's precision. The room was filled with a soft blue light, surrounded by alien technology that looked both advanced and fragile. Nearby, robotic systems continued monitoring the revival of other humans. David noticed movement in his peripheral vision. Other humans were beginning to stir, each awakening differently. To his left, a woman with short hair groaned and sat up, quickly. To his right, an older man seemed confused, looking around as if trying to understand where he was. David knew they were all carefully selected survivors, each with a specific skill set that might prove crucial. Status, he spoke firmly, his voice cutting through the growing confusion. Yuna Kim approached, her alien features a mixture of hope and uncertainty. Her translation device struggled to convey the complexity of their situation. David could see the fear in her eyes, the kind of fear that comes from absolute desperation. The Void Swarm has destroyed 17 star systems, she explained, her voice trembling slightly. Our entire civilization is on the brink of complete destruction. David processed the information quickly. 17 star systems meant billions of lives lost. Conventional military strategies had failed completely. Whatever threat they were facing was beyond normal understanding. Around him, more humans were becoming fully conscious. A young engineer named Sarah was already examining nearby technology, her fingers moving quickly across unfamiliar control panels. Another man, Marcus, was stretching and assessing his physical condition with military precision. The alien administrators watched nervously. Humans were unpredictable, a quality that both terrified and fascinated them. Where other species would calculate and hesitate, humans seemed ready to act. David stood up, his body remarkably strong despite decades in cryo sleep. The genetic and technological preparations had worked perfectly. He walked towards Yuna, his movements deliberate and confident. "Tell me everything," he demanded. "Hold nothing back." Yuna began explaining the Void Swarm, a collective intelligence that consumed entire civilizations. It wasn't just a military threat, but something more complex. A living technology that adapted, consumed, and destroyed everything in its path. The other humans were now fully awake. They gathered around, listening intently. David could see the calculation in their eyes. These weren't just survivors, they were humanity's most adaptive minds. "We need a complete strategic overview," David told Yuna. "Every detail about this threat. Our technology, your technology, everything." The alien administrators exchanged nervous glances. They had awakened humans as a last desperate hope, but humans were an unknown quantity, potentially more dangerous than the threat they were fighting. Sarah, the young engineer, was already connecting alien systems to human technological interfaces. Marcus was reviewing battle simulations with a critical eye. Others were checking their physical conditions, assessing their skills. David knew they had limited time. The Void Swarm was approaching. 17 star systems had already fallen. Humanity was quite literally the last hope for multiple civilizations. "We're not just going to survive," David said quietly, looking at the alien administrators. "We're going to fight back." The room fell silent. The humans looked ready. The aliens looked terrified. And somewhere in the cold darkness of space, the Void Swarm continued its relentless advance. Humanity had awakened, and nothing would ever be the same again. The conference room buzzed with intense energy. David Kim stood at the center, surrounded by his carefully selected team. J. Park's fingers moved across holographic displays, revealing complex quantum patterns that made the alien scientists blink in confusion. "We don't see a problem," Jay explained, his voice calm and confident. "We see an opportunity." The Void Swarm's technology was unlike anything the Galactic Confederation had ever encountered. It moved like a living system, consuming and adapting with terrifying speed. Where other species saw an unbeatable enemy, the humans saw something else entirely, a puzzle waiting to be solved. Elena Rodriguez stood nearby, her eyes scanning psychological profiles of the Void Swarm's collective intelligence. She wasn't just looking at data. She was searching for patterns of behavior, moments of potential weakness. "They're not random," Elena said, pointing to a series of complex interaction maps. "They have predictable decision-making processes. We can exploit that." Michael Chen had been quietly working on something revolutionary. His adaptive combat systems were unlike anything the Confederation had seen before. Instead of fixed strategies, he was designing weapons and defense systems that could think and change in real time. The alien administrators watched with a mixture of fear and hope. These humans worked differently. They didn't follow standard protocols. They didn't accept impossible as a final answer. Jay's quantum analysis revealed something extraordinary. The Void Swarm's technological network had subtle rhythms, almost like breathing. Most species had missed these micro-patterns, but humans saw them clearly. "Here," Jay pointed to a specific frequency pattern. "This is where they're vulnerable." Michael quickly began designing a weapon system that could exploit these discovered weaknesses. His fingers flew across interfaces, creating something that was part technology, part living system. Elena's psychological analysis added another layer. The Void Swarm wasn't just a technological threat. It was a collective intelligence with predictable behavioral patterns. She was developing strategies to confuse and disrupt its decision-making processes. David watched his team work, a slight smile crossing his face. The alien administrators had seen humans as a last desperate option. Now they were witnessing something else entirely. "We're not just going to defend," David told the room. "We're going to attack." The team worked around the clock. Sleep became optional, every moment counted. The Void Swarm was still advancing, consuming star systems with terrifying efficiency. Jay's quantum engineering created interfaces that could penetrate the swarm's defensive systems. Michael's adaptive combat designs turned traditional warfare concepts upside down. Elena's psychological strategies promised to introduce chaos into a seemingly perfect collective intelligence. "They think we're predictable," Elena said during one strategy session. "We'll show them how wrong they are." The first test came quickly. A small probe, designed using their new strategies, was sent into a recently consumed star system. The results were shocking. Not only did the probe survive, but it also gathered critical intelligence about the Void Swarm's inner workings. The alien administrators began to see hope for the first time in years. These humans weren't just survivors. They were game changers. David looked at his team. Jay with his quantum insights. Elena with her psychological brilliance. Michael with his adaptive design skills. They represented humanity's greatest strength, the ability to see possibilities where others saw only limitations. "We're ready," David announced. "It's time to take the fight to the Void Swarm." The room fell silent. Outside, space remained dark and dangerous, but something had changed. Humanity had awakened, and they were ready to fight. The preparation was complete. The real battle was about to begin. The first wave of human-designed ships emerged from quantum jump points like ghosts. They were unlike anything the Void Swarm had encountered before. Living machines that thought, adapted, and responded faster than any traditional combat system. Michael Chen's adaptive combat technology turned each ship into something more than a weapon. They were intelligent entities, capable of making split-second decisions that defied traditional warfare logic. Where alien ships followed strict protocols, these human vessels moved like living creatures, unpredictable, fluid, impossible to anticipate. J. Park's quantum disruption technology created battle formations that seemed to break the basic laws of space movement. Ships appeared in locations that should have been mathematically impossible. They shifted, merged, separated with a complexity that confused even the most advanced tracking systems. Elena Rodriguez had prepared the psychological warfare component. The human ships didn't just attack, they communicated in patterns designed to create maximum confusion. Strange signal sequences, deliberate pattern interruptions, psychological triggers that would disrupt the Void Swarm's collective intelligence. The first contact happened near the border of a recently consumed star system. Massive void swarm vessels, each the size of small planets, waited expectantly. They had consumed 17 civilizations. They expected this to be another simple conquest. They were wrong. The human ships struck with precision that seemed almost magical. They weren't just attacking, they were dancing through the battlefield. One moment a ship would be in one location, the next moment somewhere completely unexpected. Quantum technology mixed with adaptive combat systems created a nightmare scenario. For the void swarm, target identified, disrupting. Michael's voice was calm, almost casual. A massive void swarm vessel suddenly found its internal communication systems fragmenting. Another experienced quantum fluctuations that made its defensive shields collapse. A third discovered its collective intelligence being bombarded with psychological warfare signals that created internal confusion. The battle wasn't just about destruction. It was about sending a message. Humans were different. Humans were unpredictable. J's. Quantum technology meant the human ships could be in multiple potential locations simultaneously. Elena's psychological tactics meant the void swarm couldn't predict their next move. Michael's adaptive systems meant each ship was learning and changing with every microsecond of combat. The void swarm had never experienced true uncertainty before. Its collective intelligence was built on perfect calculation, absolute predictability. Humans introduced something it had never encountered: chaos with purpose. Ships exploded, quantum fields twisted. Psychological warfare signals created cascading internal conflicts within the void swarm's massive vessels. David Kim watched from the command ship, his eyes tracking the battle's progression. This wasn't just a military engagement. This was a demonstration of human potential. "We're not just fighting," David said quietly to the alien commanders watching with him. "We're rewriting the rules of warfare." The battle lasted hours, but felt like moments. When it was over, the human forces had destroyed 3 major void swarm vessels, something no civilization had accomplished before. The message was clear. Humanity had arrived, and they were nothing like anyone had expected. As the quantum dust settled, one thing became absolutely certain: the galaxy would never be the same again. The void swarm had encountered something it could not calculate, could not predict, could not understand. They had encountered humans, and humans always found a way to survive. The final mission looked like madness. Mathematical projections showed 0 chance of survival. David Kim's assault team prepared to strike at the heart of the void swarm's central hive, a massive living technological structure that had consumed entire civilizations. Their ship was unlike anything in known space. Hybrid technology from multiple species merged with human adaptive systems created a vessel that was part machine, part living organism. Every system could think, adapt, and respond faster than any traditional combat design. "We're going straight into the center," David told his team. The bridge was quiet, filled with people who understood they might not return. The central hive was enormous, a structure larger than entire star systems. Its technological tendrils stretched across multiple, dimensional spaces, consuming everything in its path. Conventional warfare had failed against this monster. Humanity represented the last hope. J. Park's quantum navigation systems worked perfectly. Where other pilots would see an impossible journey, he saw potential pathways. The ship moved through impossible spaces, sliding between dimensional barriers that should have destroyed any traditional vessel. Elena Rodriguez monitored psychological warfare systems. Her technology was designed to create maximum confusion within the void swarm's collective intelligence. Each communication signal was a weapon designed to create internal conflict and uncertainty. Michael Chen's adaptive combat systems turned the entire ship into a living weapon. Traditional ships followed protocols. This ship could think, change, and respond in milliseconds. It was learning with every moment of the journey. As they approached the central hive, something extraordinary happened. The void swarm recognized them, not as a threat, but as something completely unexpected. Humans didn't follow any known pattern of technological or biological warfare. "We're inside the primary defensive perimeter," Jay reported calmly. Massive technological tendrils reached out to consume them. But these tendrils met something they had never encountered before, a ship that could think faster than their consumption systems. The battle wasn't just physical. It was psychological, computational, dimensional. David understood something the Void Swarm didn't. Humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something more profound: hope, potential, the right to exist. Explosions erupted across multiple dimensional spaces. The ship moved in patterns that defied basic physics. Quantum disruption technology created cascading failures within the Void Swarm's central systems. "Target identified," Michael said. "Preparing final assault." The ship systems merged human creativity with technological precision. They weren't just attacking, they were rewriting the fundamental rules of technological warfare. Elena's psychological warfare system sent complex signal patterns that created internal conflicts within the Void Swarm's collective intelligence. The massive technological entity suddenly experienced something it had never known: doubt. In the final moments, David realized they were doing more than fighting. They were proving something about humanity's potential. Mathematical calculations meant nothing against human creativity, determination, and hope. The central hive began to collapse. Dimensional barriers fractured. Technological systems that had consumed entire civilizations suddenly found themselves being consumed. "Mission complete," David said quietly. When the quantum dust settled, something extraordinary had happened. The Void Swarm, the entity that had destroyed 17 civilizations, was gone. Humanity had accomplished the impossible. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Humans had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same again. Survival wasn't just about technology. It was about something more profound, something that couldn't be calculated or predicted. It was about hope.